for assignment number 3, okay? So let me pull that up. You're also going to see a link to the Alabama Virtual Library, but I'm going to show you 2 ways to get to it if for some reason, like you're not in our class on Blackboard. I'll show you 2 ways to get to it. So assignment number 3, it says it's your research project. So this counts for 1/3 of your grade, and it's broken down into your sources count for 100 points, your rough draft counts for 100 points, and your final draft counts for 100 points. So it's pretty much, the rough draft and the final draft are, kind of like what we've always been doing, but the sources now count for a part of your grade too. So it says first choose a topic that discusses something that is a key to good health mentally and or physically. So you get to choose your own topic for this assignment. What you're going to do is choose some topic that has to do with health, and that could be physical health, mental health, spiritual health, one that combines all of those. So it could be something like drinking more water, or exercising, or meditation, or whatever it is that is a key to better health. And I've had students do all sorts of, topics. It could be focusing on one thing, like maybe if you want to focus on ways to combat diabetes, or like maybe that's something that is kind of, at the forefront of your life, or it could be anything. It could be, like I said, exercising. You could choose a specific exercise, which is exercise in general, maybe walking or yoga or lifting weights. You could do staying hydrated. Of course, you could do anything to do with nutrition and the food that you eat. You could do, if you don't want to focus on the physical, you could do things that deal with mental health as well. Maybe you want to focus on staying healthy mentally and spiritually versus just physically. Or like I said, maybe you choose something like, for instance, yoga that embodies all of those things, the physical side, the mental side, and the spiritual side. So you can kind of, play around with it. Just think of something that maybe you've used in your life, or maybe you're interested in trying, or, it could be anything that you come up with. There's so many things you could, do for this, or directions you could go in. So I put up there that a few examples might include exercise, drinking enough water, journaling every day, just something that has to do with living a healthy lifestyle. You could also do something not to do, like if you wanted to tell me why you shouldn't smoke or vape, or why you shouldn't, I don't know, eat a certain food that's bad for you. You could do that too. It says carefully read and analyze your sources from the AVL. Remember that all of your sources have to come from the Alabama Virtual Library. So you can't just Google sources. They all have to come from the AVL. And then what you're going to do is you're going to look at your sources. You're going to decide which parts of those sources you'd like to use in your paper. We're going to be talking about MLA format and style. I know usually in 101 my students haven't had any experience with the MLA format, and that's totally fine. If you did learn it, like maybe in high school, or, but you don't remember it, or, you just learned little bits of it. Because sometimes in high school you're taught a little bit of it, but not like the full style and formatting, guide or whatever. So I'm going to teach it to you, and we're going to go, kind of from the ground up with that. So just remember that this assignment will be in third person. So this is a more formal academic style of essay. It'll be a 5-page paper, not just a 5-paragraph essay. So you're used to writing a 5-paragraph essay. And really with this assignment, there's no difference. You're just writing a 5-page paper. So your intro is kind of the same. And as far as you're going to have a hook, background thesis, your body will just be longer, and your conclusion will be the same in that you're going to touch back on your main points and type in the loose ends. The only difference is instead of having 3 body paragraphs, you'll have, a lot more body paragraphs, and you'll use your sources within your paragraph. So we're going to work on that in class. I know a lot of people get overwhelmed, or they get a little nervous about this because it is hard. If you've never written a paper like this before, it can seem kind of like daunting and kind of overwhelming, but we're going to, work on it together. It won't be anything that, will be too stressful, hopefully. So you'll have a 5-page paper. Your 6th page will be your works cited page. I will show you how to format your works cited page. We'll do all of that together as well. And so your sources and your rough drafts are due on the 17th. So you got, about 2.5 weeks. And that's what we're going to be covering in class for the next couple weeks. So, any questions on that? Any questions on that? Okay. So that's your instructions for assignment number 3. So let's go and look at the ABL. So, up in our class on Blackboard, if you look at the course materials, there's a link here. So if you ever get confused about how do I get on the Alabama Virtual Library, you go to that link. Or if you go to the weeks that we're going to be working on your research paper, like this week, week 7, you can go there too. The other way that you can find it is if you go to the CACC homepage. And it's changed recently. They kind of redid how the library page looks. But if you go to the CACC homepage, you go to services. And then you go to the library, the Learning Resource Center. You'll see that this is the library homepage. That's our librarian. Now, obviously, we don't have a library on campus here. They have the main one is in Alex City. Of course, there's one at Childersburg. But so that's why I had y'all do online sources, because it's just easier to do it that way. Even if we had a library on campus, we would look at print sources, but most of the time now, online sources are the way to go. They're updated better, and you're not having to go through books and magazines in person, paper wise. So, but if you go over here, if you click Find Sources, that's not what I want. Hold on. I really have sources, but you see there was a link right here, and I think they have changed that. There's your books and ebooks right there. I don't know that you'll want to use that. If you do want to use it, you can, but you don't have to. There's a research help as well. You can email the librarian if you ever have questions. There's a composition guide for English classes here. If you ever want to use that, that's there. Again, none of this you have to do. You don't have to do any of this, but if you want to, it's there, just so you know that there's resources there. All right, so let me click on, it should be under Find Sources. Yeah, okay. Alabama Virtual Library. They used to have a big stamp right there, so I guess you have to click on this link now. When you go to the Alabama Virtual Library, this is what it will look like, okay? So you can either do it through there, which I don't recommend, that's a lot of steps. I would just go from Blackboard. And while you're working on this, I would bookmark it to your browser, your internet browser, so you don't have to go through any of that if you don't want to. If you don't want to go on Blackboard and worry about that, and you don't want to have to go to the CACC homepage, you go to the library page, just bookmark it, that way it's there. One thing I do need to make you aware of, so what I want you to do is, this week, when you go home, I want you to try to get on the ABL at home and make sure you can get on at home, okay? Because sometimes, even my computer, sometimes at home, will deny me access to the ABL. And what it is it has to do with your geolocation, where they think you are. The ABL is free to residents of Alabama or students in Alabama, and as long as it knows you're in Alabama, it's free. If it doesn't think you're in Alabama, you know sometimes when you shop online, and it'll think, like sometimes my computer thinks that I'm in Texas for some reason, or it'll think I'm in Georgia for some reason. And I think it's a safety measure. I don't know tons about that stuff, but if the Alabama Virtual Library picks up that your location is somewhere outside of Alabama, it won't let you have access to it. So I've had students before that couldn't get on the Alabama Virtual Library at home. It just, their location wouldn't allow them to get around that. So what you'll have to do is, if you have that trouble at home, just message me and let me know, and I'll get you a passcode from the librarian that'll bypass all of that, where you can have access to it without having to pick up your location. Usually everybody's fine, but once a semester I'll have 1 or 2 people that can't get on there. But anyway, so check that. this week. When you go home, check and make sure that you can do all that. Okay, let's look at the Alabama Virtual Library. So this is what it's going to look like. And you'll see it's broken down from elementary school, middle school, high school, to college and university, adult sources or resources, ebooks, and then you can go into all resources. We always choose college and university. Obviously, that's what it's set on. So when you go into it, it should already be selected for you. If it's not, then just click that right there, college and university. And you can go through and look at all of these databases. So if you look, it breaks it down up at the top in the red. So there's business, career, dictionary and encyclopedia, ebooks, images and art, literature and language, news resources, science and health, which will probably be one that you might go into this time, social sciences, and then additional resources. So you're going to see all sorts of things in here. You're going to see things like news stories or newspaper articles, peer-reviewed journals, articles for academic journals. You'll see all sorts of things. And so one reason why I like the ADL is because it's constantly updated. So you might see things on there that appeared in the Daily Home or the New York Times or whatever, but they're all new, up-to-date sources. You'll see older ones on here too, but it's just an easier way than print sources. So you don't have a cutoff or a rule about how old your sources are in here. So for this assignment, just as long as your sources are, somewhat current, that's fine. I'm not going to give you, a lot of times in classes, you'll have a window of how old your sources can be. So, obviously, if you're doing something medical related, you don't want to pick a source that's like 20 years old. You want current, up-to-date information. But I'm not going to give you a specific range on that. I'm going to let you kind of gauge that yourself. So, for instance, in my literature classes, I don't give them any range at all, because if you write an essay about, let's just say, Edgar Allan Poe 50 years ago or today, that information doesn't change. So with this, I'm just going to let you use your own judgment. You use, the latest information, but, make it fit what you're doing. So it's going to be up to you. Okay, so you can filter it up here if you want to. Like if I just wanted science and health, I can just switch it to science and health, and it'll get rid of those other ones. It'll filter it down for me. So if I go into science and health, I've got these. Now, if I go back to all, there's going to be a couple that I would suggest you start with, no matter what you're doing, just because they're very big and broad, and they have a lot of information in them about a lot of different things. One is going to be Academic Search Premier. That's going to be a good one. It has a lot of just all sorts of articles in it, okay? The other one is going to be, let me find that. EBSCOhost search right here. That's going to be another one that's very broad. It's a good one to start with. Just like any search, okay, let me go down here before I get off on that. General One File, Gale General One File is a good one too. That's another big, broad one. That's going to give you a lot of. If you're looking for news articles that are kind of brief, but very modern, very up-to-date, very what's going on right now, opposing viewpoints in context. That's a good one. And I'll show you that in just a second. But those three, the Gale, General One File, the EBSCOhost, and the Academic Search Premier, those are good ones to start with, because they're going to have, a big range of information on them. These are basically like little Google search engines. They're just kind of more specific, if you could think of it like that. Just a database. Okay, so let me show you what these look like. Now they're all going to look slightly different, okay? They're all a little bit unique. They have a lot of the same features, but they may be in different places, or they may look different. So let's start with academic search for me. I'm going to use smoking as my topic today, okay? Let's just kind of go with that, and I'll kind of show you what to do. So, you know yourself, we all Google stuff every day. That's the first thing I do if I need to figure out something, whether it's a recipe or something breaks, I want to fix it, or I didn't know how to make something, or I didn't know if the store's open, or whatever I'm doing. I'm going to Google it. And so you're all familiar with using Google. And you know that usually when you Google something, the first thing you do is you start off broad. And then you see what Google produces, and then if it doesn't give you what you want, you go smaller, more and more specific until you get super specific and see if it'll give you what you want. You can do the same thing in here. You can start off really broad, and if you don't find what you're looking for, get more and more specific, okay? So, right here, when you go into, like I'm in academic search here, this is where I'll type in my topic, and I'll click search. It will autofill sometimes. This one does it, I know for sure. So I'm going to type in, I'm actually going to go with dangers of smoking. And so see how it wants to autofill it for me? I'm going to go with dangers of smoking. And it's going to pull up my results, okay? So let me explain how to kind of filter through these results. So it's going to show you the title of the article, and it's going to show you what kind of article it is. Like if it's a periodical, it's kind of like a news article. Academic journals, this is where people like doctors and other, scientists, whatever they are, even literary scholars, it just depends on the type of journal. They will write an article that's heavily researched. It actually has to be approved by a panel of their peers. So it would be like if you had a PhD in history and you wrote a paper about the Civil War and you submitted it to a history journal, and a panel of people who also have PhDs in history read it, fact check it, make sure that it's something they want to publish, and then they publish it. That's why academic journals are pretty reliable. I would say very reliable because they are peer reviewed. So academic journals, you've got videos by the Associated Press, you've got reviews. So I would kind of stay away from reviews of just books. If you didn't read the book, I wouldn't use a review of a book as a source. That's like a third-hand source. It just depends on what kind of review it is. So you don't have to look at editorial and opinion. Now that's okay. You're using an editorial that somebody's written about the dangers of smoking. So another way that you can see what you're working with here is you can go over here to your filters, okay? So just like on Amazon, like if I'm going to buy something on Amazon, I want it to be prime. I'm usually going to filter it down to prime, right? And then I'm going to filter it down by like size or by price or by whatever. You do the same thing in here. Filter it down to see what you're looking at. Now, you may not have any specific standards when you go into it. You may just be looking at whatever you can find, and that's fine too. But if you are looking for something and you keep looking, you just can't seem to find what you're looking for, then I can start going to my filters after I get my topic specific. So you can limit it to full text, references available, peer review. Like maybe you only want peer reviewed articles so that you can be sure that they're legit, okay? Publication dates. So this is 1942 to 2024. You can change that publication date maybe to 2020 if you only want articles within the last 4 years. But again, I'm going to leave that up to you. I'm going to let you kind of do your own thing on that, and you choose use your best judgment, choose whatever dates you like. You don't have to choose any dates if you don't want to. You can just leave it like it is. There's more options there. You can filter it down by the type of source. News sources, magazines, academic journals, trade publications, reviews. There's more. Books, electronic resources, reports, government documents, primary source documents. So now keep in mind a primary source is like, if I told you to read I don't know. Let's just say I made you read the Diary of Anne Frank, okay? It's something most people have to read in school. If I made you read that story, that book, and then I made you also read articles that people wrote about that book, keep in mind that your primary source is always going to be the book itself. So, like, the Diary of Anne Frank is your primary source. Secondary sources are articles or periodicals written about the Diary of Anne Frank, okay? You can go down here too by publisher, company, age, gender, all that stuff. I don't think you'll get too far into that. So let's also explain something else. You're free to use videos if you want to too. I wouldn't make all my sources videos, but if you want to use a video, you can. I just wouldn't like do that for every single one. So let's look at this first article here, the dangers of smoking and inhaling. So it tells you where it came from. It came from a magazine or a journal called Current Health. Came out in February of 1997, volume 20, issue 6. It has 5-color photographs. We don't really care about the reading level. Now, it's only available in HTML. So let me explain to you the difference between HTML and PDF. So if you notice, this first one's in HTML. The second one's an academic journal that came out in 2007, and it's a PDF full text. Now, I'm probably not going to choose an article that came out in 1997, right? Because there's been tons of change since then. That's almost a 30-year-old article. So I'm probably not going to use that because vaping wasn't even really around 30 years ago. So if I'm going to talk about smoking, and then if I were to kind of piggyback on that, with vaping, I wouldn't use that. But the second one says, avoiding the danger that stop smoking services may exacerbate health inequalities, building equity into performance improvement. That doesn't sound like something I need. I'm going to keep cruising through here. The dangers of smoking in bed. Okay, that was written in autumn of 2021. That sounds like something that I could use in my paper if I wanted to talk about smoking. Physical dangers of smoking, not necessarily like health dangers. So I know that this is a review. It has one photograph. Now, it'll show you in subjects. It'll show you what it's about. So, Dangerous Smoking in Bed, this is a book. I'm not going to do that because that's a review of a book. That's another review. Let's go down here. Okay. No, that's 1987. I don't like that. Let me find the right one. I'm looking for one like 2020 on. Oh, that was written in 1962. That's an old one. I didn't even know that anybody in 1962 knew that smoking was dangerous. All right. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to filter it by date. Again, you don't have to do this. It's just if I'm not in the paper, I want it to be. I'm going to do 2020 all right.
I see it with the videos. The videos I see with the YouTube.
Yeah, you can use videos. You can. Just don't make it like all your sources videos. But yeah, you can definitely use the videos. Some of the things you're going to see are like medical studies, and it's going to be very statistically driven, and that, a lot of these they go over my head when I read them. They don't have like solid information I would put in a paper. Some of them will have information you could use in a paper, but some of them are just about things like drugs and, how drugs work inside the body. It's very chemical, scientific based. It's like not something I would use. I want to find my perfect one. All right, prevalence and trend of smoking smokeless tobacco use and its associated factors among adolescents aged 12 to 16. In 138 counties or territories, it's a little bit much, I think. Alright. Smoking cessation and counseling. A mixed method study of pediatricians and parents, okay? This is a good one. So this one came out in, it looks like, 2021. The subjects, look at your subjects. So if you're, like, when you're doing your research, you don't have to click on every article and look at it. Look at your subject words and see if that stands out to you in some way. And if it doesn't, just keep moving. If it does, then you can save it for later, or you can click on it then, just depending on which one it is. So subjects here: smoking cessation or stopping smoking, electronic cigarettes, smoking prevention, parent attitudes, parenting, Connecticut, all other ambulatory healthcare services. It goes on to tobacco manufacturing, tobacco product manufacturing. So that one looks like something that I might be interested in if I was writing my paper. Notice that it's got HTML and PDF. What you're looking for is PDF text. It doesn't matter. If you see HTML, you can still use it, but it's more helpful when you get to citing and stuff if you have a PDF copy. So this is an academic journal, okay? So I'm going to show you the difference between HTML and the PDF. So if I click on HTML, this is what it's going to look like, okay? This is my article. And I like it broken down into little sections, and it's got, this is a survey that was done, blah, blah, blah. Now, if I go back, let me go back, and I click on my PDF is way nicer because this is exactly what it looked like in print, okay? So you're seeing, it's just like if you took an article in a magazine or a newspaper and you tore it out and you scanned it and you sent it in. This is exactly what it looks like in print, okay? So here's my, now, you're going to see, a lot of times they're going to include what's called an abstract, especially if it's scientific. All an abstract is it's a short, like, paragraph that tells you what that article is going to be about. So if you want to click on it and read the abstract, that'll save you some time too, because you can just read that paragraph and say, I like that, I want to read more, or don't like it, not for me, not going to work for my paper, and then move on. So I don't want you to spend too much on sources that are not going to benefit you or that you know you're not going to use, in other words. So this is what it would look like. So this is 13 pages long, and again, you click on any of these pages, but you can go through there. So this is exactly what it looked like in print. So you see how you've got your page numbers here, right here? That's what we're looking for, because that's going to help us a lot when we cite things and we have to put our page numbers. If we have just an HTML, it's just that article. It has all the same words. It's the same article. It's just like if you retyped it yourself, but it doesn't like it did in print. So you want to use the PDF version if at all possible, okay? I'm going to click out of that. Yeah. And then, all right, so I'm going to click out of there, go back. There we go. Okay, so if you just click on the title, you can do that too when you're just going through there and looking. So it's got the title of the article. This has several authors, and it lists the authors. It tells you where it came from. It tells you the subject terms, geographic terms. This is the abstract right here. So you can read the abstract if you want to. See how this abstract is about a paragraph long? You can read that and just say to yourself, yes, I'm interested in it, no, I'm not, and that'll save you searching and, reading like the first page of every article that you see. Now let's look at this stuff on the side right here, these tools. These are great things to use as you start looking for sources. So if you see a source you like, but you don't want to read it right then or you don't have time right then, you to do. Email the link of it to yourself, and that way you'll have it. There's the print right here, so you've got Google Drive, save it to Google Drive, save it to OneDrive. You can save it to your bookmarks up here if you just wanted to. I don't recommend doing that because you might end up wanting to save several articles that, you don't want to kind of, what would be the word, clutter that up. You can print it, you can email it to yourself, you can save it. So you can also create a little, almost like a little profile here where you can save stuff to yourself in this AVL. You can export it, create notes on it. The permalink is if you wanted to like share it. You can listen to this article if you wanted to listen to it. There's a translator there, but what I wanted to show you was the citation. So, in here, we're going to use MLA 9th edition. It's the edition that Motor Lanes Association is in. So you're going to see lots of different ways to cite something. If I go down here, there's APA. That's another popular one. Chicago's popular for history classes. There's MLA 9th edition, okay? Now, this is already all done for you. So when you get ready to do your works cited page, all you have to do is copy and paste it, okay? Not cheating. It's a tool that's there for you. When I was in college, there wasn't anything like that. I had to have the MLA manual, and I had to cite everything myself and know how to cite everything. So these days, they make it very easy. So let's kind of segue from that into talking about MLA style, okay? So, how many of you have used MLA style before, like in high school? Okay. Good. If you haven't, hopefully this is just a review. If you haven't, though, it's not a big thing to get, like nervous about. It's just a different way of citing things. So, the reason why we use MLA is so that we don't, use somebody else's intellectual property, like their writing or their thoughts or ideas as our own, and not people create it for us. So we have to cite anything that we use in our paper. The other reason why we cite things is to add weight to our paper. So I can tell somebody to quit smoking all day long, but if a doctor or the Surgeon General says it, who went to medical school, then it carries a lot more weight than just me, right? Because me saying it, I'm not a doctor. So we use our paper so that we can add weight to our papers. So anytime you're going to use a quote in your paper. So the way that we do it in MLA style is a system of what they call quotations and citations. So you're going to quote something and then you're going to cite, okay? So anytime you quote or cite something, there's 4 things that you need. Quotation, your in-text citation, you're entering your works cited list, okay? So let's go back. Let me go back and I'm going to use this article as an example. Actually, I should have clicked on that. So let me give you. Again, don't shy away from HTML. If you see an article you like and it's in HTML, that's fine. You'll see in just a second. All it's going to do is make it a tad bit harder for you to cite it, but I wouldn't shy away from it if you like it, okay? So let's get into this. This is a little more scientific than I would normally go for, but I'm going to use it. All right, so let's pretend like I have found a quote that I want to use, and I have. let me go back to, let me just see something real quick. Let me see my authors. Okay, I see. So the person that I'm going to use as my author, I'm actually going to use the first two last names at all, okay? If you just have one last name, you just use their last name. But since they all contribute to it, I'm going to say, I think it's Holland. This is the one. Yeah. So when you go down to there, I've got my quote that I'm using. Clinicians were more confident in counseling adolescents about social conditions and association than in counseling. And counseling here, so. Okay, so this is my quote. Clinicians were more confident in counseling adolescents about smoking prevention and cessation than in counseling parents, okay? So, I've got my first two things here. I've got my signal phrase, okay? My two people, and I've got, you're always going to use a verb, and it could be a word like state, or write, or point out, or argue. It could be any of those verbs, but keep in mind, this verb right here, whatever you use, needs to be in present tense. Now, if you're using a different format, like if you were using APA style, then you might have to use it in past tense. That happens sometimes too. But in MLA style, always remember that this is going to be in present tense. So it could be, it could be anything you want it to be. It could be one word, it could be a phrase. Now, so I've got, number one, I got my signal phrase. Number two, I've got my actual quotation up here. The next thing I need is an in-text citation, okay? That's where PDF stuff comes in. So right here, in parentheses, I'm going to put the page number that was on. And the page number that was on, if I come over here, is on page 5, okay? So because that article looks just like it did in print, I can use what they call a stable page number, okay? So I'm going to have page 5, and I'm going to put my period after my quotation marks. I'm sorry, my parentheses, okay? Right after my parentheses. So that's number 3. That's number 3. So I got 3 of the 4 things I need. Now, let's talk about this. So, there's a rule about using quotes in your paper as far as length goes, okay? So, here's the rule. I want you to remember this. So there's different rules for prose and for poetry, but I'm only going to tell you the prose rule because we don't need poetry. You'll learn it in 1 or 2. So when you're dealing with prose, okay, a short quotation. If it's 5 lines or more, we're going to use a block quotation. Now, keep in mind, this is of your paper, not the way it appears in print, okay? So you can almost be sure, though, that if it takes up 4 lines in print, it's probably going to take up 4 lines of your paper. But keep in mind that, I'm going to do that so it won't stay there. It's of your paper. So sometimes you get into kind of like gray area. Like, I'm not sure if this is going to work or not. You might just have to type it out and see. Alright, so this one obviously is only 2 lines, so I can use it as a short quotation. Now, that gets into how we punctuate our signal phrase right here, okay? Now, with a short quotation, or what we call a regular quotation in MLA style, your punctuation with your signal phrase is going to vary. Now, I can put, maybe I don't need punctuation at all if it goes straight into the quote. I could technically put a comma here. I could not. That's kind of one of those things. It's like an opinion-based thing. If I have a complete sentence before my quotation, I could use a colon. Again, if I formulate it so that it goes straight into my quote or part of the quote, maybe I don't need any punctuation at all. That's going to vary. What's not going to vary, though, is if you have a block quotation. So let me show you how to do that. So the thing that's going to differ if you have block quotation, this is if it takes up 5 lines or more of your paper, okay? And it's going to look like this. I'll use the same one for right here. Okay? I'm going to use a colon. I've got, actually, let me put in my et al. Too, so put that in. But I've got to have my colon right there, okay? And then I'm going to have this, I'm going to type that out, I'm going to put my colon. I'm going to come down to the next line, so I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to tab over 2 terms. Tab once, tab twice. Tab. And I'm going to start it right here. So it's going to be on that second line. So let's just pretend like this is 6 lines of typed wording from there, okay? The only difference is I'm going to put my period before my parentheses. And I'm going to put my page number after. So let's just say that I didn't stop here. Let's just say maybe I decided that I wanted to have, like, instead of that part, I wanted to do this whole portion right here, you know. Then I could put that in a block quote. Block quotes are very useful. The only thing you want to stay away from is using too many of them. Because sometimes what people will do is they'll just fill their whole paper up with block quotes. It's nothing but block quotes. And then it makes it look like you didn't really write anything, like you're kind of relying on this block quotes to take up space in your paper. But block quotes are very, you know, they're good as long as you use them sparingly. You just don't want to fill in the paper with them. So just keep in mind, those are the differences. So right here, I've got the same thing. I've got my signal phrase. This is my quote. This is my page number. I've still got the same for things. It's just formulated differently. You're only going to do this if you use a block quote, okay? And that's something that we'll work on in class. We're going to take some time in class where if you're struggling with your quotes or you're having a hard time setting up your signal phrases and stuff, I'll be glad to come help you with those because that's something that, you know, a lot of people have a hard time with that. It's just not something that you have to do every day for every class. So it makes perfect sense. So as you get started with your paper, the first thing I want you to do is choose a topic, okay? So sometime in the next week or so, start thinking about your topic, like, or maybe you already know one that's come to your mind. It could be something that you already implement in your life or something that you're interested in, or maybe you want to try something having to do with health and you're not sure and you'd like to research it. Like, For instance, we were told recently that apple cider, which I already knew this, but apple cider vinegar will naturally lower blood pressure. Well, that would be something I'd be very interested in researching and possibly doing a paper on. Would that really work? What is the studies that have been done? What do they say? So, think about something maybe you're interested in your own life or something that you already do. Maybe you're already athletic and you're into walking or running or yoga or lifting weights or whatever. And you know a lot about that, or maybe you follow a certain diet, either for health reasons or just because you feel better when you do it, whatever it is. Keep in mind, this is not going to come from your personal perspective and that it's not first person, but it is still your opinion. You're just putting it in third person, okay? So in the next week, think about a topic that you would like to use for your paper, okay? Think about some kind of aspect related to health, mental health, physical health, spiritual health, any kind of health, overall health, and make sure that you can access the ADL from home or wherever it is that you're going to be doing your research. So, if you go to like a friend's house or whatever to do most of your research or your homework, then make sure wherever you're going to be working on this primarily, you've got access to it. You'll always have access at school, obviously, because it's through the school, it's a subscription. But I want to make sure that you can get on your own computer. And if you are having trouble, message me and let me know, and I'll get you a passcode. She's very quick about doing that. Usually, she'll get me one within like an hour. It's no big deal. But I've had students before wait until literally the 11th hour and say, oh, well, I can't get on the ADL at home, and my paper's due tomorrow. What do I do? So don't do that. We want to make sure you have plenty of time to work on this. So think about your topic. Make sure you can get on the ADL at home. And then you're going to brainstorm like normal. Once you choose your topic, start brainstorming. You can do this one of two ways, okay? So with a research paper, you're not just relying on your own knowledge anymore like you did with your first couple of papers in here. So you can either brainstorm first and come up with your 3 points that you want to talk about in your paper, or you can come up with your topic and then research and see what's out there to see if that'll help you with your paper and kind of lead you in a direction. It's up to you, okay? But whatever you do, you're still going to do your brainstorming. You might do it before you research, you might do it after you research. It just kind of depends on, how confident, you want to be in finding sources. So the main goal in the next couple of weeks is to find your sources and make sure next Monday when we meet, we're going to have a lab day. So I'm not going to lecture that day. I'm going to remind you of everything we're doing, but what we're really going to work on is you finding your sources. Okay, so we're going to work on you working on your own. I'll be coming around to help you if you need help finding something or if you need help citing something, if you've already found some stuff and you're already working on your paper. Y'all might be in different phases of the writing process that day, and that's fine. I'll help you wherever you are if you need help. And if you don't need help, that's fine too. Some people don't need help and they don't want help and they just want to work on their own, and that's fine too. So we'll be doing that next week on the 8th, okay? On the 15th, what we're going to do that day is you should have the bulk of your rough draft written by then, okay? What I'm going to do is help you again with your quotations and your citations, and we're going to cover this again as a refresher. We're going to touch back on it next week, but I'm not going to spend a bunch of time talking to you next week, so I'm going to let you work on your own. Same thing with the week after. I'm going to let you have some time to work in class and for me to come around to help you with your quotations, because there's a chance that, again, y'all will be at different, you should have your rough draft written by then, but, some people may need help with certain things, other people with different things, some people might not need any help, so I'm going to be coming around and helping you. So, like I said, figure out your topic. You can either start your brainstorming or start your research first, depending on how you want to go about it. They kind of go hand in hand. A lot of times students will pick their topic and then look to see what's out there to say, oh, I can't find any sources, so I'm not going to go with that topic. Or you may see tons of topics or tons of sources, and know that that's what you want to do. And then you just have to narrow down what you want to do. So remember, you can have 5 sources. Videos are fine, as long as your whole paper is not made up of videos. Same thing with block quotes. Block quotes are fine, just don't put your whole paper full of block quotes, you know. Don't worry about this stuff right now, okay? I've showed you how to do it. We're going to go back over it next week, but don't worry about that right now. Your focus right now is your topic and your initial research. So you're going to do it just like we've always done. You're going to take away 3 main points that you want to focus on for your paper. Your main points are going to be longer than a paragraph this time, okay? But think of 3 things you want to say, and then how do you want to organize them? For this particular paper, probably emphatic order going from least to greatest importance will be your best way to go about it. Time order, chronological order is not going to be as effective for this, okay? So I would say focus on the emphatic order. Come up with 3 reasons, 3 things, whatever it is, going from least to most important. Figure that out, okay? And then start working on your rough draft. What I like to do, especially when I was in college, a long time ago, and I used to write papers, especially when I got to graduate school, the papers got a lot longer, so I might have to write like a 15-page paper on the topic. And what I would do is, I would kind of do a roadmap or a blueprint of what I wanted to say, okay? So, you know how we always talk about, in a typical paper where you've got 5 body paragraphs, 5 paragraphs and 3 body paragraphs, you're going to have your introduction. No different for this paper, okay? So you got your introduction, you're going to have your hook, background, thesis. Your body right here is going to be longer, but your conclusion is going to be the same. So you're going to touch back on your main points. Wrap up. Tie up loose ends, wrap it up. So for your body, you're still going to have your 3 main points, okay? And all you're going to do is just spread them out. So you've got 5 pages. Now, people always say, does it have to be 5 full pages? All the time I said it's go to half of the 5th page and you're good, okay? It just needs to be about half of the 5th page. You can't get a full 5 pages in. So with your body, you know, you're going to have, I'm going to just say 3 points. And you can spread those points however you want to. 1 point might take up 2 paragraphs. 1 point might take up 2 pages. 1 point might take up 4 paragraphs, okay? So you decide how you want to make that work, you know, because it can't be totally, truly equal, and that's fine. So 1 point, especially your less, you know, the least of all 3, you might just spend 2 paragraphs talking about it. And then your middle point, you might spend 5 paragraphs talking about it. And then your biggest point, your most, you know, your most important and one that's going to really drive your point home, your whole topic home, you might spend 2 pages on it, okay? So just got to keep that in mind. So keep in mind, too, that you got to work your quotations in, too. So what I used to do is, let's just say my 3 reasons for smoking would be, so we've done this before, cost, looks, and health. So maybe the least important thing that I would, you know, say in my paper about why you shouldn't smoke is because it's very expensive. But maybe that's the least of my worries and the least of my troubles because of smoking is expensive. Number 2 might be looks. It causes wrinkles. It causes yellow teeth. It causes staining of your teeth and your hands. And, you know, over time, it causes you to lose your elasticity in your skin. Lots of other things can happen. But looks might be my next most important thing, but my most important might be health. And I talk about all sorts of things dealing with, you know, health to do with smoking. Lung cancer, throat cancer, mouth cancer, COPD, emphysema, all sorts of things that can happen if you smoke, okay? So I'm going to go in that order. Well, maybe I say, okay, cost, I can't really talk about the cost of tobacco for too long, right? I mean, we all know it is what it is. I can't drag that out for 5 paragraphs. So I'm going to say I'm going to spend 2 paragraphs on cost. Plus, I'm going to have 2 quotes. Books, I might say I'm going to spend 1 page plus 1 quote. And in health, I might say I'm going to spend 3 pages talking about all the bad stuff that can happen. Plus, I'm going to have, I'm going to say 3 quotations. I'm going to go over 5 and have 1. Okay? And then I've got my introduction and my conclusion. So just kind of have a ballpark, just a little blueprint of, okay, this is kind of where I think I'm going with my paper. That helped me a lot when I was younger. Just having some map to go by. Because you can have all your sources set out in front of you can have everything in front of you, and have to, have to write it all, and it gets overwhelming. The other thing that I want to encourage you to do, if you have the means to do this, is to, when you settle on your 5 sources, print them out. You don't have to show them to me in class that way, because I'm going to grade them off your rough draft. But what I want you to do is, it's easier for you if you print these sources off. I personally don't like having to switch between tabs. I don't like having like 5 tabs open up here, plus the tab that I'm using, for whatever else, plus I'm in Word or I'm in Google Docs, and you lose your way too easily. So here's what I would do. When you settle on your 5 sources, print those out, put them together, staple them or paper clip them together, and highlight the portions that you're interested in using in your paper. The things that really stand out to you, that you like, or that you think somebody else would be interested in too. Highlight those things, okay? That'll help you a lot, not having to switch back and forth and look at tabs and look at your phone. A lot of people have stuff open on their phone and their computer and whatever else. The other thing that I would do is, you're going to highlight the portions that you really like. As you use those, check them off so you use all 5 sources in your paper, because that's one thing I grade you on, is making sure that you have 5 sources and that they're all represented in your paper. Okay? So, do your brainstorming or your pre-writing, or do your research, however you want to do it, but come up with your 3 reasons, okay? Come up with your topic, and then come up with your 3 reasons, your 3 points that you want to talk about. You've got your introduction, your body, and conclusion. In your introduction, as far as your hook, this would be a great place for a fact or a statistic. This is one place where that comes in very, very easy. So if I was doing a paper on smoking, I might say this percentage of people who smoke will end up with an uncurable lung disorder or disease, okay? That would really hit home. So think about it from your perspective. What makes you want to read more? Even on social media, when you see a post or you see a reel or a meme or something that has words with it, what draws you in and makes you want to read more? Usually it's something that kind of shocks us or startles us or surprises us in some way. So think about that. Use a factor statistic. Your background is a good place to get some of your quotes in. Okay, so give me a brief background of your topic. If it was smoking, I might talk about how, 100 years ago, nobody knew that smoking was bad. And I feel like maybe my generation was the first generation of kids who were told that smoking was bad. Maybe I would talk about how, certain generations are seeing the effects of cigarette smoking, whatever I wanted to talk about with my background, but it should lead into my 3 points, And then my thesis, you can keep your thesis super simple for this. Even though this is like a longer paper, your thesis doesn't have to be complicated. It can be very simple. My thesis could be something like 3 reasons to quit smoking are the cost, the effect on looks, and the effect on health. And then, of course, you got your body conclusion. So, inside your paper, all you're doing is using these articles to back up what you're saying in your paper. So, you're still in charge of your paper. You're not just, a lot of times people will kind of make themselves like the mediator between articles, and you don't want to do that because you're not just merely a mediator. You are the person who's writing the paper, and you're just using this to back you up, okay? All right, any questions on that? All right, let's jump to something else that has to do with this, but I want to cover the last thing, this fourth thing. So when we have a quote, we got our signal phrase where we introduce who said it, and then we've got our actual quote, and then we've got our page number. Now keep in mind, with a short quotation, I'm using quotation marks right here, okay? With a block quote, I don't use any quotation marks, and the reason why is because I'm going to set it apart from the rest of my paper. So it's kind of clear that there's boundaries there. So all quotation marks are, or setting your paper apart in a block quote, it's just like a little fence, like a little boundary to tell your reader that those are not your words, those are somebody else's words and thoughts. Okay, so when I got my three things, I need that fourth thing, so how am I going to get it? Let's look right here. All right, so if I get out of this is what I was using, this is my article. Where I'm going to get that is right here under cite, okay? So let me show you what it's going to look like. The last page of your paper, your sixth page, will have, so a lot of times what I'll tell people to do is to write your whole paper and then go back and do this on a separate day. It shouldn't take you that long, but just don't do it all on one day. It can be overwhelming, especially with this. You're probably going to take a couple days to write your paper. So your sixth paper, if this was my paper, it would look like this. It would have my last name and my page number. That'd be my header. I'm not going to do my name info again. I don't need that again. All I need is the title, Works Cited, Centered. Okay? Don't underline it. Don't italicize it. Don't put it in quotation marks. Don't make it fancy. Don't make it blue. Nothing like that. Just plain old Works Cited. Alright, so here's how you're going to set your quotes up, or your works cited entries, I should say, not quotes. You're going to alphabetize them by your author's last name. Okay, so put them in alphabetical order. I've had students do all kind of weird stuff, like they want to put them in by the order that they used them in. They want to put them in, like, let me also take this. You only have to put an article in your works cited list one time. It doesn't matter if you used it like 3 or 4 times in your paper. You only have to put it in your list one time. So just remember, you're going to alphabetize by the author's last name. If for some reason you come up with an article that's like written as part of a newspaper and it doesn't list who wrote it, sometimes they'll do that. Like the person who wrote it is part of the organization. Go to the next thing, which is the title of the article. Okay? So you got works cited. Alphabetizing by the author's last name. So if I was using this article, I would use my citation tool. I click on it, and then I go down to MLA 9. There it is. Copy and paste it. Okay? Now, the only thing missing from this is my access date. Sometimes the databases will put it in and sometimes they won't. But I'm going to copy and paste that into my paper. See how it says, it's got your last names et al. So all it's going to have is it's got your authors. It's got your, actually they just used the first person. They didn't use the first 2 authors, just the first person et al. They've got your article title. And then they got where it came from. So +1, that's called your container, okay? Your container is wherever an article appeared originally. So for instance, a container would be something like the Ancient Star or the Daily Home, or the New York Times, People Magazine. Wherever an article shows up, like their parent or, whatever the bigger publication is, that's your container. okay? Volume 16, issue 2, February 2021, there's 12 pages. It tells me my database where I got it, and then it's going to give me either a DOI or a URL. Now, the only thing that I'm missing here is my date of access. So I would need to put that in, okay? Put in your dates of access. Let me also show you. If you go back up to our course materials, if you click on the MLA format and style guide, it'll help you too. This is like creating a work spotted list using the 9th edition, all that stuff. So like, for instance, if you didn't know how to put in a publication date, you can find it there. Your date of access, that's what we're looking for. So you see how they wrote accessed for May 2009? So today is July the 1st. So what I would put is, at the end of I would copy and paste that. I would copy and paste this, okay? At the end of that period, I would put accessed 1 July 2024 for the period access, okay? So don't forget to click your dates of access. Some databases will include it for you. It just depends. This was it. Okay, so you're going to use hanging indentation. I can show you how to do that. If you copy and paste it, you probably won't have to worry about it. That'll be something we'll work on next time or the time after. But between now and next Monday, I want you to work on coming up with your topic and then deciding, brainstorming a little bit or going out there and seeing what's on the ABL and start thinking about your 3 things that you want to say and start looking for your sources. Next Monday, if you haven't gotten that far yet, that'll be fine because we're going to spend that day as a lab day looking for sources. I can come around and help you if you're struggling finding sources or